Alright guys and girls, Sean Lockett here, your host of the Midnight Highway Radio. What you're about to listen to is an interview I conducted with Lance Eberhardt, okay? He was on the show The Dead Files, and the episode was titled Hell in the Heartland. I'll tell you what guys, you're really going to enjoy this interview. Lance is a great guy. I got him on my friends list. He's very open-minded, great guy, great family, but a very hellish story. Now, one thing that I wanted to say before you hear this interview is right before it begins, we actually captured an EVP right at the beginning of the show. So, I mean, as soon as the interview begins, you're going to hear it. Actually, right before the interview begins, like soon as the video starts, you're going to hear it. Tell me if you guys hear it. What do you hear? What do you think it's saying? I can't make it out. Lance can't make it out. But there's definitely something there. I don't know if it was caught on my end or his end. I'm assuming it was his end. Either way, guys and girls, this is Sean Lockett, your host of the Midnight Highway Radio. Please subscribe to our channel, like our videos, and I got much, much, much more great material coming your way. Thank you guys so much for the support. I really appreciate it. Enjoy, guys. Okay. All right, so you let me know when you're... Okay. All right, so you let me know when you're... Okay. All right, so you let me know when you're... Okay. All right, so you let me know when you're ready, bud, and I'll go ahead and get the show started.
I'm ready to rock and roll.
All right, let's do it. All right, well, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning. Wherever you may be, I am Sean Lockett, and you're listening to the Mystic Paranormal Podcast. Tonight, we got a good one, guys. We're going to be talking to Lance, and I'll tell you what, I don't know if it's demons, I don't know if it's ghosts, I don't know what it is, I just know it's paranormal, and it happened in a house that he lived in or is living in. We're going to find all that out. Lance, welcome to the show, bud.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sean. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you coming on. I'll tell you what, I actually got to watch your episode when you were on the Dead Files, and I have to say, man, watching that episode, just looking at you, you look like a legit guy. Like you're not somebody making stuff up. You're a legit dude.
Well, I'm glad I come across that way. I mean, everything that happened, did happen. It was traumatic. It was terrifying. Any adjective you can think of to describe it that you could put in a horrifying fashion, then yeah, that would describe this experience that we went through.
Yes, and you know what? It's not just you. It's your children, your wife. Everybody was so legit. I liked what the guy said on the show, too. He said, either you're the best actor in the world, or we're dealing with something that we've never dealt with before, pretty much.
Yeah, it's, I caught a lot of, well, I didn't catch a lot of flack. Steve DeShavi, the co-host of the show, he apparently caught a lot of flack for how tough he was on me, but, I was raised by a chief master sergeant, so dealing with him was just kind of a walk in the park.
Right.
We were used to dealing with that. We were used to dealing with people not believing us and doubting us and saying, "Oh, you're making this up." No, I mean these things really happened.
Right. So without giving away too much, that people know we're going to be talking about something paranormal that took place in your house. Tell us a little bit about you, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, we're originally from Texas. We now live in northwest Missouri, close to a little small town called Kearney, Missouri, which is actually the birth and burial place of the outlaw Jesse James.
Ah, okay.
So a lot of history, a lot of Western history here. A lot of, unsavory characters kind of went through this part of the country. We bought this place in 2008. We were living in Houston at the time. We had an opportunity to move. We thought that moving to a rural environment would be a better place to raise our kids. My wife actually found the place. I just bought it based on pictures that I saw on the internet.
Okay.
So, and things kind of started happening from right when we moved in.
So, all right, take us back there.
Yeah,
What you move into the house, you find this good place. What was the first night like? Was it normal? Did you feel something different?
You know, the first night, I didn't really feel. I didn't feel anything. I didn't notice anything. I didn't, other than how quiet it was. You know, we came from Houston, Texas, which is just a massive amount of people. I mean, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to this small little town of about 8,000 people where everything shuts down at 10 o'clock. And then we weren't even in the town. We were outside of the town. So the quiet and how dark it was, I guess, is kind of how I would describe the very first night here.
Okay, when did things start beginning? What happened? Like, was it you? Was it one of your children? Was it your wife? What took place where people thought, well, something's different about this place?
Well, it was our oldest daughter.
Okay.
And she was the very first one to start experiencing things. She would tell us that she would see things, that she would hear things, that she would hear voices, that things in her room would move around. She would hear knocking and tapping on the windows. So she was really the first one to experience the things. And it was the very back bedroom, which was her room. And naturally, just me being a skeptic, I didn't believe in any of this. When she would come to us, obviously we think, okay, wow, our kid is having a breakdown. And we actually just thought, well, maybe it's just adjusting to moving.
Right.
So that was kind of my first thought. But things they didn't go away. And I just, we finally just took her to the doctor, to the psychiatrist, and obviously they're gonna diagnose her with something.
Right.
So, but the problem is that the medication that she was on, the therapy she was on to, wasn't helping. Things were still escalating. Things are, you kind of start to get to the point where, my goodness, she's having really just a terrible breakdown. So she was the first one to really start experiencing things.
Okay. When was the first time where you said, you know what? Let me rewind that a little bit. Did something happen to you to where you thought, you know what, maybe she don't need to be on medication, maybe she don't need therapy, maybe something is going on? What was it, you or your wife, that experienced something that led you to think that way?
Well, everybody in the family at some point started to experiencing things, started hearing things and seeing things, and I was still in denial.
Okay.
And it wasn't until one point where I was in the house by myself, and I was working in the office in the basement. And I remember it was winter, and it was dark, and Jennifer and the girls were all gone. They were shopping somewhere, and I was at home by myself. And I was just finishing up in the basement, and I'm sitting at my desk, and all of a sudden the printer behind me just starts going off and starts spitting out paper. I don't really think anything of it, and I think, okay, well, something's caught in the printer queue. That's all. So I go to turn it off, paper's still going out. I said, okay, well, maybe there's just some residual power in there, because sometimes, these things just kind of have battery backups.
Right.
And so I was going to unplug it, and I reached down and I unplugged it, and the paper I still could hear the paper going. This is crazy.
Yeah.
And then right before it kind of dawned on me that, okay, this thing's still going up, the most blood-curdling, loud scream of a woman.
Wow.
Like she was just someone was murdering her. And it was so loud, and it was like it was right behind me, scared the hell out of me, and I froze for a second, and then I took off running. I got out of the basement, I went outside, and I sat outside wearing shorts and a T-shirt, barefooted, for probably about an hour until Jennifer and the girls got home. I was too scared to go back into the house.
Wow, dude.
And that's when I started thinking, holy shit, this stuff is real.
Right, right. You know what, that reminds me, I grew up in a haunted house as well, and there was this one incident I wanted to speak about real quick where my sister, I was real little at the time, like, I don't know, 8 years old, 9 years old, something like that, and I was going up with my dad to drop my mom off to work, and my sister was allowed to stay home. Well, we had just had a birthday party, and we're twins, so she had all her birthday balloons in her closet, okay? And when she was in the bathroom getting ready for her friend to come over or something, doing what girls do, all these balloons at once just started popping. Pop, 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 all at once in the closet. And needless to say, a lot of things happened before that incident, but she ran out of the house, and when we came home, it reminds me of what you just said. You were sitting there barefoot outside on the porch or whatever. She was doing the same exact thing. It's just weird like that. What'd you tell your family? What'd you tell them? How'd they react?
Well, believe it or not, they were kind of excited that something happened to me.
Okay.
Because all of a sudden they were like, "Now you believe this."
Right.
And I like, well, yeah, I have no way of explaining this. There was no radio on. There was no TV on. Nothing. Nothing was on, and nothing would have cut on. And of course, we don't have anything in the house. It's just going to scream
right
like that. And so they were happy that something happened to me, because now I was slowly starting gradually to believe that, okay, there's something going on here.
Exactly. I wanted to ask you this too. Before you actually moved into the house, did the sellers or the bank, whoever it was, did they mention anything about anybody dying in the house or anything like that at all?
No, not at all. And, what we kind of have found out after the fact was that in Missouri, that does not have to be disclosed. No death of any kind has to be disclosed on the property that you're buying.
Interesting. Okay. So take us through what started. Tell us about the escalation of activity in the house.
Well, there was a time when kind of things really started to pick up from an activity standpoint, and it was kind of a very long story. And without going into too much detail, is that we actually live on 15 acres, a 15-acre farm.
Okay.
And there's one section on the southwest corner of our property where we had found something that looked like a grave. And,
okay.
There's something that looks like a headstone. And, being in a rural town, in a rural area, you hear guns going off all the time.
Right.
And there was a time I was on the back side of our land, just on the other side of a pond, and I heard gunshots. Don't think anything about it. I heard it all the time, and then all of a sudden I hear this like a whoosh sound, and something hits me on the hip, and I actually was hit by a stray bullet. It didn't go into me; it just kind of grazed me, but it was enough to kind of just piss me off.
Right,
and,
yeah. Okay.
Call the we call the sheriff's department. They come out, and one of the first deputy that comes out is actually an acquaintance of mine, and we go walking around on the back side of the land. And as we're walking around, I tell him, I said, you know what, we're going to stumble onto this, so I just want to bring it out in the open. There is something that what we think is a grave on our property. And of course he's going, okay, well, let's see it. So I take it over and show it to him. He's looking at it. He goes, yeah, it looks like a grave. Lance, what is there a grave doing on your property?
Right.
And I go, come on, look, it's obviously old. And so he walks around, and he doesn't really say anything else about it. And he just kind of dismisses it. And then at that time, a couple of other deputies show up, and they go out and they look at the grave, and they go, oh yeah, this is really something. I'm not sure what it is. And the next day, he calls me up and he goes, hey, I was talking to my supervisor and telling him about the grave, just kind of telling him about the story, and
That's
And
not polite.
I could, yeah, and they're doing this, and I'm just standing there, and all of a sudden I'm just kind of, a rush of anxiety just goes over to me. It goes over me, and I'm thinking, this is just not right. They shouldn't be doing this.
Right, exactly.
And they finally stop. They realize, they go, okay, well, obviously this is something historic. We don't want to mess with it. We don't do anything with it. And I kind of look at that as that kind of opened up a little bit of a floodgate, kind of opened up a little bit more of a crack where things started happening. You know, the activities kind of started to escalate at that point, and things kind of started moving on their own. And, you know, it got to the point where, you know, we couldn't explain things. You know, all of a sudden we started feeling sick. You know, no one was sleeping, and just you could just sense the heaviness in the house after that happened.
Yes, and we're going to get into the Deadfile episode here in a little bit, but I remember on that episode, your daughter, I think it was the youngest one, I'm sorry if I forget, but she said something about a pumpkin that was moving by itself.
Yeah, you know, there was, things were moving, and, you know, there was this, we had this spoon that was not ours, wasn't part of our silverware at all. I just happened to find it in the yard, and I brought it in, and there was this spoon would always disappear, and then a couple of days later it would come back, and it would just come back flying through the air. You know, it would nearly hit people. And there was a time that we thought, okay, you know what we're going to do? We're going to get this spoon disappearing and then coming back. Right. So we can prove to ourselves we're not crazy, that we're not losing our minds. So I had set up my phone leaned up against a pumpkin and right on the spoon. And I'm sitting in the dining room where we're recording all this. And all of a sudden I hear this like a guy laughing behind me. The phone falls to the ground. The spoon disappears, and then all of a sudden, the pumpkin just levitates and is thrown across the room, out of the dining room, into the living room, almost hitting height.
Wow. And you know what? A lot of people out there are going to cry, BS, BS, BS. But I'm telling you, they do that to me, Lance. I'm telling you, I've went out, I've investigated, I've got EVPs. People think they're fake, but until, and I say until you have your own personal experience, you're going to have your doubters.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the activity is real. The activity is definitely real. There's no doubt about it. I know for a fact you've had some kind of experience. I could tell just by looking at you on camera, unless you're like, you should be doing Hollywood acting. I mean, seriously.
Boy, if I was that good of an actor, I certainly wouldn't be working on a ranch and a farm in Northwest Missouri.
Right. And you do have a blog up, too, I wanted to mention real quick. Because a lot of people tune in, they tune out, they tune in. What is this blog? Give the address to that. How do people check this out, and what's it about?
Sure. After our show aired, we got just a lot of questions, and we were getting almost to the point where we were bombarded with questions. We were overwhelmed with questions. Okay. And, you know, we want to answer them all, you know, to the best of our ability.
Right.
And a lot of it was, you know, well, what didn't we see on the show? What didn't make the show? You know, kind of fill in the gaps. And the blog was an easy way to tell our story from the very beginning to where we are now.
Okay.
And because, you know, we had activity starting in 2008. They filmed our episode in May of 2016. So that's 8 years of activity. That's 8 years of things happening. And, you know, a lot of people think that, okay, when you have a haunting or you get experiences, it all just rushes in and it happens at once, and that's not the case.
No, exactly.
You know, for us, it builds up. So we felt that the blog was the best way to tell our story because you can only fit so much into a 46-minute episode.
Yes.
And the show did a really good job of kind of giving a summary of of what we did.
Okay.
But the blog starts from when we moved into the house, and this has progressed to where we are. It's going to progress to the point to where we are today. We're almost to that point. The blog address is ourghoststory.blogspot.com.
Okay.
And, and what we are trying to do is, we want to share our story. And because, it took a lot for us to put ourselves out there on national television,
Yes.
to tell our story. And we know that there's people suffering out there. We know that they're dealing with things that they can't explain. And they don't have the courage to come forward
Right.
to get the help that they need.
Right.
So we're hoping that us sharing our story and answering the questions and saying this is what we did, this is what we experienced, and maybe kind of pointing them in the direction that they can go. We're not paranormal hunters. We don't go out and do investigations. We're lay people. That's not our thing.
Right, and I've interviewed Carmen Reed. I don't know if you're familiar with A Haunting in Connecticut.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that.
Yes, she, it was the same thing. When Ed and Lorraine Warren came down to their house, they wanted it to go public. They really didn't want it to, Carmen and her family, but they did. And I'll tell you what, a lot of people called them out on so many things. It was harassment after harassment, and a lot of people are afraid to come forward because of that. I mean, they really are. They don't want the recognition. They don't want the scrutiny, people bashing them. So I think what you're doing is pretty good. So one thing I want to do, Lance, is your blog. I'm actually going to permanently link that to, if that's okay with you, I would like to permanently link that to our website, mysticparanormal.net, because I know what it's like to grow up in a haunted house, and I'll tell you what, it takes a lot to come out, man. It really does.
And you know what? When we started telling our story, and we started talking about it more publicly, and we found, we got a lot of support.
Mm-hmm.
And there are people that would come to us and said, this happened to me when I was a kid, or this happened to me recently. Do you think that has anything paranormal? And, those are difficult questions for us to answer because, one, we're not experts,
Right.
We can only talk about, hey, this is what happened to us, and this is what we did. And, it took a lot, like I said, put ourselves out there on a national television show. But we were to the point where we were just so desperate.
Yes.
That we were just mentally exhausted. We were physically exhausted. We had nowhere else to turn. We didn't know what else to do.
Well, what happened? Now, I know you had a paranormal investigating group come into your home. What led up to that? I understand it would have been events that were going on, the paranormal activity, but what was the deciding factor? Okay, look, deciding event where you said, look, we're going to bring in a group and we're going to try to get to the bottom of this.
The incident that led to us, working with that paranormal team was something that happened with my daughter, our oldest daughter.
Okay.
And we came home after my wife and I after going to dinner, and she is just in tears. She is just in a panic. And she said that there were people banging on her window. I mean, not just knocking. I mean, banging on her window, yelling, "Let us in! Let us in!
Ooh.
Let us in!" And that was the point. That was the point. My wife and I said, "Okay, we've got to do something. This is just getting way out of hand because now doors are opening and closing. For the life of us, we could not keep a light bulb burning in our house for longer than a week. We were constantly replacing light bulbs, and they wouldn't just burn out. You wouldn't just go to turn it off, turn it on, and the light bulb's out. No, these light bulbs would just all of a sudden burn bright and then explode.
Wow.
And at that point, we're petrified.
Right.
So, my wife, she was watching the Dead Files.
Okay.
And I started watching it with her a little bit afterwards. But we were trying everything that we could to educate ourselves and try to figure out, what are we dealing with here? What's going on? And she was researching the dead files, and she found the site, which was what she thought was the dead files submission site. Well, it turned out it wasn't. It was a fake site set up by this paranormal team.
Oh,
and,
wow.
Yeah. So the team totally misrepresented themselves. They were telling us that they were a investigation team hired by the producers of the dead files to do investigations, just to gain evidence, to see if there really was something there, because the producers didn't want to waste the money if there wasn't anything there. So we thought, okay, well, that sounds legit.
Yeah, it does. It does.
You know, yeah, so we didn't think anything of it. The team came out, and long story short, they took 2 hours to set everything up.
Okay.
And all of a sudden, at about 2:30 in the morning, they decided it wasn't safe for them to be there and wanted to pack everything up.
Yes. I seen that on the Dead Files. What the hell happened, man?
They came in, and the first thing that they wanted to take me down into the basement. And we all sat in a circle in the basement.
Okay.
And they put a recorder down in the center of it, and they started asking questions. I started feeling that anxiety again. You know, that anxiety that I felt when the detectives were poking at the grave.
Right.
And I said, oh, man, this just doesn't feel right. And all of a sudden, I started to get hot, like my skin burning hot. And then all of a sudden, I feel like somebody just claw me in the back of my neck. And I freak out. I take off running. And one of the guys grabs me and stops me, and he shines the light on the back of my neck, and I have this huge just cut on the back of my neck. Well, that just excited them. They were just so excited that they got something.
Right.
And I remember very vividly when we were all sitting in that circle, and they were asking questions. And I remember that the lady who was doing it, she said, I command you to come forward. I command you to show yourself.
Yes, big mistake.
And, yeah, well, I felt in my mind said, this doesn't sound right. I don't think you should be doing that. But it just didn't dawn on me.
Yeah, I can only imagine what you're thinking.
Yeah. Well, I finally calmed down, and they convinced me to go back down into the basement.
Okay.
Because now, and I remember Jennifer was not very excited about that, because all of a sudden, looking back at hindsight's 2020, they're using me as bait.
Yeah, they are.
And so as soon as we get down in the basement, I am just completely overwhelmed. A rush of anxiety. My skin is burning up. I'm hot. And I feel this just tremendous pressure on my chest. And the medium that they had with him, she has her hand on my chest, and she's saying some kind of prayer, and I keep saying, we need to get out of here. We got to get out of here. This is not right. Take your hands off me. You're burning me.
Right,
then,
right.
The next thing I remember is I wake up on the floor.
Yes, I remember that. Yes.
And when I wake up on the floor, I'm completely calm. I'm fine. But everybody else around me is just completely in chaos. Their tones are excitable. They're just on nonstop, talking. And I just get up and I just walk out of the basement. As soon as I get up into the garage, Jennifer meets me. She goes, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine." I go, "Why is everybody freaking out?" And she goes, "We saw it on the TV monitor that you were physically picked up, like about 2 feet off the ground, and then thrown up against the wall."
That's wild, man. I mean, wow. I thought I grew up in a haunted house, but you take it to a whole different level.
And I don't remember any of it. But they showed me on the one guy, he was so excited. He goes, look what we got. And I see it. Wow, I can't believe that. And then the main the leader, I guess, of the team, they all go back downstairs, and they are doing stuff. And what was really kind of telling to me is that the median, they asked her to go back down in the basement with them. She said, no, I'm not going.
Okay, I don't blame her.
And I remember the guy, he radios up to their little base camp, and he said, you know what, pack it up. It's not safe for us. We need to get out of here.
Hey, good thing for faking that you're with the Dead Files, right?
Yeah, and Jennifer lost it. She was livid. She goes, no. You're just not going to piss this thing off and then just leave us here. Right. And so she made them do a cleansing. Okay. Which they just did half-ass. Right. Okay. And, they just made our whole situation worse. And then when we asked them for the evidence, they said, everything that we saw was inconclusive. We didn't do a complete investigation, so we destroyed all the evidence. Yeah, right. What? Yeah, okay. That's crazy, man. I can't I'll tell you what, today, and this is just me, the day that I physically got thrown or something like that, I would have probably been out that door, man, and not looking back. That's me, but I know they did more harm than good, because something that led up in a Dead Files episode, which is, I believe it was called Hell in the Heartland, correct? Yeah, that's correct. Hell in the Heartland, I think it was season 10, episode 1. Right. It aired May 6th of 2017, I think. Right, and you guys and girls listening right now, you can actually tune into YouTube and look it up, and it's just sitting right there, and I watched it, pretty amazing show. We're getting more details here because obviously we get to go be, like you said, you can only crack so much into one episode of that show and all the editing and all that. But what happened after the paranormal group left? Did the activity escalate? Did it die down a little bit? I mean, what happened? It died down for about 3 days. 3 days, okay. Everything you can possibly imagine. The woman screaming, now she would just constantly scream. Nearly on a daily basis, we could hear her screaming. Did she say anything, or was it just a scream? No, she wouldn't say anything. She would just scream. Sometimes she would scream once, or sometimes she would just scream like 3 times in a row. Did it sound like she was in agony or like rage? What kind of scream was it? It sounded like crazy. Like she was just like somebody who was just hysterical. Okay. So, there are things that the spoon that I mentioned earlier would just leave, come back. We would start having knives that would end up in our ceiling. That's crazy. Footsteps. We could hear a man walking through the house, like wearing boots, walking very slowly, through the house. Okay. There was one incident where all of our cabinets in our kitchen, all the drawers, all the cabinets, all the appliances, everything was open. And what was weird about it is everything was open perfectly. Like all the drawers were aligned. They were all open the same distance. Okay. So, and it was to the point where it was just exhausting. It was just like breaking us down mentally because we couldn't sleep. Now, a lot of people are asking me this too, and it's a good question. I know you had kids and all that. Did any of them ever like dabble into Ouija boards or anything like that before this activity, or was it nothing like that? It just poof, it just came on. It was, nothing like that. Okay. We never did anything that was like a Ouija board. We never did any type of seances. Right. We weren't, overly religious. Okay. We didn't do really anything out of the ordinary. We were just a normal American family. Right. So, how did you come across the real Dead Files organization? What
What happened there?
Well, luckily, the Travel Channel had changed up, made it easier to submit stories to the Dead Files.
Okay.
And so my wife and I, we were actually watching it one night, and they had a segment where they said, hey, if you need help in your home, contact us, and here's the website address. So my wife was actually able to find it and submit our case, and within 2 days, they called us.
Wow. That's crazy. Now, you just submitted it one time.
Just once, yes.
And then 2 days, boom. What'd they tell you? What'd they say when they contacted you?
It was a long process, really. They contacted us, I want to say it was August of 2015, and they said, we're really interested in your case. They spent a lot of time talking to us. They do a lot of venting. They really want to make sure that it's a legitimate, something legitimate that they're dealing with. They're just somebody that just doesn't want to be on TV.
Right.
They said, well, we're really interested in you. We just got done filming, I think at the time they said season 7, I think.
Okay.
And we're not sure whether or not we're going to be renewed, but if we are going to be renewed, we're going to contact you. We certainly would want to do your case. We want to make you, if we are renewed, we want to make you the season premiere.
Wow, nice.
So, we didn't hear from them. Nothing. Everybody with the production company just scattered. So, one day, just out of the blue, it was, I want to say it was early April or mid-April of 2016, they call us and they say, hey, we've been renewed. We're going to start filming. Yours is the first one we're going to film. How does, the mid part or the end of May look? And we're like, fine, yeah, But there was still a lot of venting. There was a producer that came out and talked to us and, talked to us about all of our experiences. It didn't really go into a whole bunch of detail. It was just asking questions like, have you been in a mental hospital? Is there any reason why would someone want to be playing jokes on you, terrorizing you, things along those lines?
Mm-hmm. They have a strong filter.
Yes, they do.
So, okay, walk us through this whole process. May comes along. They scheduled a date for you. What happened?
Yeah, they put a whole timeline together for us.
Okay.
And the very first thing that they do is, they do a lot. They take some preliminary shots, and the very first thing that happens is that Amy Allen does her walk. That was the very first thing that happened, and we could not be in the house for that.
Yes.
So so imagine us getting out of our house. Like I said, we are actually a working farm and a ranch.
Okay.
No animals could be on the property.
Oh my goodness.
So imagine moving about 20 dogs, 3 horses, no animals at all.
Right, it was a process.
That part was just a massive undertaking. So the very first thing is that Amy does her walk. And then the next day, starting really, the mid-morning, Steve DeShavi comes out and they start doing all the interviews. Okay. And the producers, all it was this, all we want you to do is just talk. Just talk about what's going on. Just answer Steve's questions.
Right.
There was no script. It was, just talk about your experiences.
Okay. So you're going through the interviews. What kind of questions were they asking you, and how did you respond to them?
A lot of the interviews that I did with Steve, you see on the show.
Okay.
And, he was tough on me. I expected him to be. I think it's great that he was, because that's his job.
Dude, he was hardcore, man.
He's legitimate.
Yeah, he was a hardcore guy. Like, I could see him. I mean, he'll look right into your eyes like a no BS kind of guy. And he was just like, hey, look, if you pull something on me, I'm going to be pretty pissed off, is basically what he said. But he said, you're, like I said, you're coming off as the best actor in the world, or this is something like we've never seen on a Dead Files. I mean, how did that stand out to you? Like, you had to be like, okay, I've seen a lot of episodes, because you guys said that you were watching the episodes, but you're stood out on this freaking national television show.
Yeah, that actually scared me. Actually,
yeah.
I mean, because it did. It really hit home, and it really scared me because it made me think, like, oh my gosh, what are we really dealing with here?
Right.
And I think that startled me, and that actually upset me more than anything, because I'm the husband, I'm the father. I got to protect my family. I got to protect my wife, my kids. And I was to the point where I just felt I couldn't do it anymore.
What was that like, Lance? I mean, not being able to protect your family, your little girls. I mean, God, your wife. That's got to be like, I don't even know how to describe it.
It's heartbreaking. It is. I mean, you are, no matter, you can't fight something that you can't see.
Exactly.
And it's just like you don't know what to do, because you're dealing with something that always has the upper hand, that always knows what's going on, and you never know where the next blindside punch is going to come from. Mm-hmm. And that's a very gut-wrenching thing. We were to the point where, we were all sleeping in the living room.
Right.
I mean, we were that petrified, and we did not want to be apart.
Right.
No one was left in the house by themselves. No.
God, that reminds me so much of where I used to live, man. Sleeping in a room all by yourself, or not all by yourself, but with your entire family. That we did the exact same thing. Nobody wanted to be left alone at night. That's just how it was.
Yeah, and our oldest daughter, she had gone away to college.
Okay.
And Chloe, our next oldest daughter, we had her starting to stay at a friend's house.
Okay. What did your friends and family say about this? I mean, how did they come across to you? Was it like, you guys are BSing, or was it like, whoa, you're going through something here, obviously, we'll help you out as best as we can?
Well, at first, we didn't talk about it at all. We didn't say anything. We didn't want to say anything. We didn't want to answer questions about it. We didn't want to bring, especially after the one paranormal team, we didn't want to bring anybody else in. So, it took a lot for us to really open up to people and say, hey, this is what's happening. This is what we're dealing with. This is why our kids are missing so much school.
Right. Now, we do got a question. Somebody saying, what was it like sleeping in your room with the shadow figure watching over you? I don't think we spoke about a shadow figure, really. I mean, do you know any relevance to that, bud?
I think what they're talking about is there was a sketch on the show where there was a tall hat, a tall guy wearing like a cowboy hat, and a Western duster. And, apparently he was in one of the corners of the room watching us. And, there were times that we would wake up, one of us would wake up, and we would wake the other one up and say, did you see that? And I'm like, no, I didn't see it. And, did you hear that? We could hear the boots walking around our bed.
God.
And that was kind of the thing, like, okay, you know what? We're all sleeping together. We're all sleeping in the living room. Right.
Now, what about your daughter, too? I know she said something about one of your daughters, I forget which one it was, about seeing a woman cry, and she could hear her crying barely, but she could actually see the woman.
Right, and that was actually Emmy. Emmy could see just, people just like they were there.
Right.
And there was one morning morning, she said that when she was getting up for school, and she was walking into her bedroom, and then she came out of her bedroom, and in the hallway, she said that she saw a girl sitting on the floor crying. Well, at first she said, well, why is Heidi sitting on the floor? That's our other daughter. What's wrong with Heidi? And then she realized it wasn't Heidi, and then she came in and got us and said, there's a little girl sitting here crying. She's very upset.
Right. Interesting.
So there was some things that would just petrify her and terrorize her, but then there were some things that would happen that wouldn't really faze her at all.
Okay, so she's probably built up quite a what would you call it, a tolerance to the paranormal activity. I mean, she has to have. I mean, growing up in something like that, I mean, that's a lot to deal with as a child. That's a lot, man. Yeah, she both of the two younger daughters have dealt with a lot. The two older daughters, they grew up, they moved on, but when things really started to get bad after that one paranormal team, it was really tough on the two younger girls. Now, I wanted to ask you this too. After the Dead Files aired, does your family have a hard time? Like, do you get a lot of people that come up to you and say, "Oh, hey, I seen you on that show. Oh yes, I know, I recognize you from this place or that." Or do you get anything like that?
Actually, yeah, we do. Just a couple of weeks ago, we were at Sam's. My wife and I, we were at Sam's. We were shopping, and we were checking out. And the cashier, after she was done checking us out, she very quietly leaned up and she goes, "I just have to ask you guys, are you the guys from that ghost show?" And we're like, "Yeah, that's us," And she was just like, "Oh, I watched your episode. I have to tell you, my daughter and my son-in-law are experiencing things. Do you know anything that they can do? Anything that would help them?"
Right.
So, the times that we've been recognized has been really associated with, okay, hey, I saw you on TV. I saw what you dealt with. This is what I'm dealing with.
Right. And you have an instant connection. Bam, just like that.
Yeah, and we want to try to do our best to help them, but like I said early on, we're not paranormal experts. This is not our profession. We'll share what we did. We'll tell you what we did. We'll tell you what helped us. We'll try to point you in the right direction. And we'll point you in the direction of maybe the people that helped us.
Right. Now we got a guy, Chris, on the Facebook Live here asking, do you still live in that house?
Yeah, actually we do. We still live here.
Okay, interesting. We're going to get into that. Let's go on now. They come in, they're doing the interviews. Take us through the whole process. You've done the interviews. What are they going to do for you? What's going on now?
After they do all the interviews, we don't know anything about Amy's walk. We haven't talked to Amy. We haven't even met her yet. Okay. And at the very end, they're going to film what they call the reveal, which is a very critical part of the show, obviously, because everything's coming to a climax. But what the viewers see on the show is really, it's 10 minutes. They see 10 minutes of Amy, Steve saying, this is what we found, this is what you can do. But that reveal lasted 4 hours.
Okay, interesting. Take us through some of that. Take us through that.
They don't, they walk us through. The producer comes in and he tells us, okay, you're about to go into the reveal. You're going to hear some things that are probably going to be very upsetting. We do not stop filming. We just continually roll. We let Amy talk. We let Steve talk. We don't stop filming. Okay. We don't want to break her concentration. Nobody talks to her. We don't talk to her. We just let her go. And so then they told us that, well, when you go in, it's going to be, she's going to be looking at you. Don't be uncomfortable with it, but please don't talk to her yet. And we said, okay, fine, whatever, So, and then we go in, we sit there, and they just start rolling. And Steve kind of starts the process, but they literally do not stop.
Right.
And Steve kind of gives a little bit of summary of what's going on, and then he says, I'm going to turn it over to Amy. She's going to tell her what she found on her walk. And she goes. And the information that you are going to get can be emotional, it can be exhausting, and it can be traumatic. But they literally don't stop filming.
What did she tell you?
One of the very first things that she says was, as soon as I got here, it was just like a highway, just a path of dead people walking back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, like they're all going somewhere. And, she starts talking about, the woman who screams. She saw the hat man. She saw some other people walking around on the property. She was rushed by two shadow figures that physically wanted to hurt her. The crazy woman, she was the one, she hated everybody in the house, but she was infatuated with me.
Yes, yes.
The crazy woman was obsessed with Heidi, and that she physically wanted Heidi dead. She physically wanted to harm her. She wanted to torture her. She wanted to do all this stuff. And, and then they show us the sketches, or then Steve talks about all the stuff that he found out about the land and the property and everything that has happened on the land. And it's
how did you react to
exhausting.
That? Yeah, how did you react to what happened on the land?
I was surprised, and I wasn't surprised, just because I know the history around here. We actually live on the Missouri side, but we live on the Kansas-Missouri border. And, during if you ever go back and you know history, you know that really the Civil War kind of started with that Kansas and Missouri border war.
Right.
Missouri being a slave state, Kansas being they didn't want to enter the Union as a slave state. But so there was one thing that stuck out, which was Quantel's Raiders, who literally went in. They were a terrorist group. And Jesse James was a part of that group, and Frank James was a part of that group. And they literally went into Kansas and just murdered people.
Yes.
And so, we found out that, as part of Bill Anderson, went by the, nickname Bloody Bill Anderson, three people that were in Bill Anderson's division of the Quantel Raiders had ties to our property. So, all of a sudden we got this maniac who has probably been on our property at one point or another, in history.
Right.
So that part can be just overwhelming.
Right. And I'll tell you what, Lance, it's already 11:22 and we got to 11:30 here. So how did all this conclude? What happened? Did the activity stop? Is it still going on? What happened?
Well, Amy, she gives you what they call a recipe and what her recommendations are that you do. And it's a very brief part of the show. But we literally had to do so many things.
Okay.
She wrote down a laundry list of things that we had to do. And it was a process. It was a process really to find the people that she recommended. Because, we would find some people and they say, oh, yeah, I'll come out, I'll do this, tell me what's going on. And I said, well, Amy Allen came out here. And they would go, oh, Amy Allen did. Well, you know what, I don't think I can help you. I have children. I can't put them at risk. So it took a while for us to find somebody, and we even had to get back in touch with Amy and say, we can't find these people.
Right.
So can you help us out? And Amy was able to find somebody, and that person was able to help us. So it was a long process, and one of the things that we found out from Amy is that everybody in the household has some kind of ability. Some kind of sensitivity to something.
I remember that.
We all have a unique, a different set of sensitivity. So no matter what, we are always going to have activity.
Yes.
Just because of who we are. And so we've had to learn how to protect ourselves. We have to learn how to protect our environment. We're very careful who we bring into the house. We have to do monthly cleansings. We all wear protection. So it's a continuing and ongoing process for us.
Okay.
Things are a lot better. We still have activity. We hear like a little girl laugh a lot. We hear like her little footsteps a lot.
So it's just something you're going to probably have to deal with forever.
Yeah, we're going to have to deal with it forever, and it's just one of those things where you just got to it's continuing and ongoing, and we have to continually educate ourselves and be diligent.
And quickly, I wanted to ask, too, because I don't want to leave anybody out in the chat room here. What did Amy say about the screaming woman that did not make the show? What did she say about her, if anything?
She wanted to kill every female member in the house.
Oh, God. Oh,
She wanted them all gone. She wanted them dead. She wanted to drive me to the point of suicide so that
you could be with her.
Could be with her.
Yes. Wow, man. I guess it's flattering and it's also scary at the same time. I don't know how to say it. That's crazy. What about the grave, though? Did anybody talk about that grave that was out there?
A lot of the information that they could find about the grave was inconclusive. Okay. So they feel it didn't tie into the show enough because they could not find anything that they could tie it into the show with. Okay.
Now, on your blog page or whatever, give the address to that again so people know again.
Sure. It's www.ourghoststory.blogspot.com.
So are you updating that like weekly, daily, or as events unfold? How does that work there? What can people expect to visit that website?
Well, we're getting a lot better. There's a lot of posts on there right now, going back all the way to the beginning. I think there's like 35 entries on there. Okay. So we're trying to be a little bit more diligent in doing it, but we're still a working farm and a working ranch, so right. Sometimes it's like, okay, I know I need to do a blog entry. I need to do something. But we get a lot of questions. And some of the questions, if they require more than just a 2-sentence answer, we'll answer those questions with a blog post.
Interesting. Lance, we're about at the end of the show. So is there anything that you would like to say to anybody out there listening that may be going through the same thing that you're going through or went through, or you're still going through it? So
the one thing that I want to say is that if you're experiencing things, don't be afraid to get help. No one should suffer in silence. There are people that are going to believe you. There are people that are going to help you. And so don't be afraid of being judged or being ridiculed. Yes. Get the help you need. Because if you just let this go, it's just going to get worse.
Right. Lance, I got some advice for you, buddy. I would say write a book. I really would. I'm being serious. I think you should. I think it'll sell, and I think people will find it interesting, and it'll also bring them help, because it'll give them, incentive to seek help, I believe, once they read your story.
Well, I'm hoping maybe, like get all the blog and we get everything together, and then, if a book will continue to help people, hey, I'm all for it.
I believe it would, Lance. I really do. And hey, I want to thank you for coming on the show, man. It's pretty much time to end, so we're going to cut it down. But I thank you so much for coming on. The story has been very fascinating. Again, that is Hell in the Heartland, Season 10, Episode 1. You can find it on YouTube. And you've given your blog, and I'm going to put that on www.mysticparanormal.net. I'm actually going to put a front page. I like it so much. And Lance, once again, buddy, I really thank you for coming on tonight, bud.
Sean, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. All right. Take care, buddy.
All right, you too. Bye.
Yep. All right, guys. What a good show that was. I want you to stay tuned for later at 1:30. I got Chastity coming on. We're going to be talking about serial killers, the dark human mind, and some of her artwork that she does. Very fascinating stuff. The girl don't have a filter. It should be a very entertaining show. I'm sure a lot of you guys and girls will have a lot of laughs. I really appreciate the questions and you guys tuning in. So, all right, guys, with that, peace for now, and I'll see you soon. I'll see you later on in a couple hours. All right, bye.